thinking the new normal ain't working fast enough for you? You're more than ready for the new built environment and its $100 billion economies funded on sun, sand, sea, digital, and people? Well, pause. Think about it with intentional thought and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what businessman, leadership extraordinaire Cassius Stewart got to say about how the sun, sand, sea, digital, and people will generate 262 new millionaires a year if we go about it the right way. Join our co-sponsors, Dom Dev Enterprises and Page Investment, and our friends at Something to Think About. Ask your questions, post what you got on your mind, tell us where you're living, and share. Because we're going to have a lit conversation on all of the foundations of what makes an exceptional economy. We'll be right back.
Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. And what we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242. So this evening we have as one of our special guests, as usual, Mr. Cassius Stewart, leadership extraordinaire and businessman. And I think we all know him in the 242. But, he has some really great qualities about him. And one of those that I like is the fact that he speaks his mind. He doesn't get boxed into a corner. And he's always very creative. Welcome, Cassius.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's been almost a year now since I've been on the last show.
Yes. And I promise I'll bring you back. And when we could get down in some nitty-gritty stuff that could really move this country forward. And I'm hoping that we'll touch on some of those tonight.
I'm excited. And, let's explore the possibilities of, this wonderful country we have called the Bahamas.
Yes, where God lives, by the way.
Absolutely.
Know that? Yeah.
Don't ever forget that.
Yes. So if we could dabble onto one of my good friends and mentors who I've never met, but, through the good graces of the internet and so forth, you get to meet them. Mr. Peter F. Drucker. And he says that the business enterprise has two and only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest cost. So, Mr. Businessman, tell us, do you agree with Mr. Drucker?
Actually, I studied Peter Drucker, and when I did my management class,
Wow.
and I studied Peter Drucker. He expounded on some very, very, very unique principles as it comes to business. And one of the tenets he expounded on are the three different aspects of business, or the three different types of business that really flourish in today's world. He expounded on one, what they call low cost. Then he has differentiation and specialty. And so all businesses are summed up into those three different categories. So when you look at, you can dissect a Walmart. Walmart is specialized in what they call low cost. And so because they have low cost, they're able to provide a lot of savings on to their clients. So they have a large market share. You have specialty products. Specialty products are companies like Victoria's Secret. You know exactly what you go in there for. And so you don't go to Victoria's Secret for anything other than lingerie and other sensual items. And then another one is called differentiation. And differentiation product is something like Starbucks. Starbucks will take the same Dunkin' Donuts coffee and twist it, call it Frappuccino and all the other fancy words, but it's just coffee. Right. And what Peter Drucker has essentially done is it kind of cut up all businesses into three different sections. But by extension, we could do that very same thing for an economy. And so when you look at different economies, if you think about the Philippines, you know that they are specialty products. They produce, I don't want to use the word servants, but helpers. And they export helpers around the world. So that's their specialty. Their government makes billions of dollars by exporting help around the world. And then you look at China, you know what China is known for, low-cost goods around the world. The Bahamas. So then by extension, let's look at our country, the Bahamas. We have to now carve out our niche market. What we are known for, we are known for tourism, sun, sand, and sea. However, though, when you look under a microscope on a macro level of our country, there are a lot more that we can also do to build up our economy. So we are known for the tourist product. We were known for banking, but that has been somehow been suppressed because of the European Union legislation and policies. But you know, the problem with the sun, sand, and sea touristic product is a dependent module, and it depends on another person's income and their resources to be able to come to enjoy in your country. And so what we have to do in this country is now, when you look at the way all world economies evolve, all world economies evolve from what first the agrarian economy, then they move into the industrial economy, they move then into the manufacturing economy, then into a service-based economy, and now into a knowledge-based economy.
Right.
However, even though the evolution of these economies are important, what is important is all economies that are moved are always underpinned by the first economy, the agrarian economy.
Right.
What we essentially did was, as we moved from the agrarian economy to the industrial economy, we somehow let the agrarian economy die. And a lot of other countries are guilty of this as well too, but the Bahamas, we are guilty of it. We allowed most of our farms to dry up. We really produced nothing. We allow everything to come in. One time ago, Lutra had a lot of farms. We used to bring in chickens and cows and beef, and there were 2 boats moving from Eleuthera to Nassau every week, every day to feed the population in New Providence. So out of Eleuthera was the source of all of the agrarian economy. Then we also was underpinned by the heavy agricultural beef products in Long Island. Somehow over the years, because we now depended so much on that tourist dollar, we moved into that service-based economy. We allow the agrarian economy to somehow, wither.
Go to sleep. Yeah.
Wither. If you know that any successful country, even though there's an evolution of the economies, you almost hold on to the first economy, agrarian economy. And so when you look at our land mass, the Bahamas has 0.8% arable land in it. Even though we have a lot of land mass, a lot of our land is not arable. And so we have to now take it to the extent, how do we now produce from all of this land, we get crops to feed ourselves. You've heard the Davis administration talk about it. You heard the Christie administration talk about it. You heard the Minnis administration talk about it. You heard the Pinner administration talk about it. Everybody say, oh, we got to be self-sufficient. We got to feed ourselves. We got to feed ourselves. And politicians talk these kind of talk just to make themselves sound good, because it's the cliche word.
Okay.
But in order for us to really sustain ourselves over the next 50 years, we have to begin to pump more resources, technology, expertise, technology into the agrarian economy in the Bahamas, while still holding on to the service-based economy, and also looking into the knowledge-based economy. And so we have to now tie the 3 economies together. Now, the last one is called a knowledge-based economy. A knowledge-based economy is an economy where where the intellectual capacity of the people determines their wealth. In other words, you don't get promoted because you sleep with an MP. You don't get promoted because you is a red, or you is a blue, or you is an FM, or you is a CFP. You get promoted because you have aptitude, you have knowledge. It's what they call meritocracy. You get promoted because you're able to produce, your fruit comes from your mental capacity. And so the knowledge-based economy is the new economy now that is now being embraced around the world, which will determine a new wealth. So you have young people in the United States now developing code, developing software, and they're becoming millionaires now at the age of 13, 15. You get young people now being able to invest in different technology, using their knowledge base to be able to bring wealth to them. And so while all that is important, you have to still go back to rule number 1. The knowledge-based economy, because even when you're producing wealth, you still need food.
Right.
And we need to be able to grow our food. So what we need to do is we need to divide our country up into different segments. Okay.
Yeah.
So you look at Eleuthera. You know Eleuthera get good.
But before we get down into the nitty-bitty of each island and all that kind of stuff, right? Let's tackle some of the fundamental things so we can make sure our audience is on the same page as we dive deeper, right?
Okay,
And so
wonderful.
if we look at then the scenario, and actually one thing before that, when I say sun, sand, and sea, I'm not talking about the traditional sun, sand, and sea that we market for tourism, because that's already a sector that is already established. That and the financial sectors. We're talking about building around those into new sections that deal with sun, sand, sea, people, and digital. And we're going to tap into those in specific. But when we look at the question now in terms of how important, back to Drucker's point, how important is it to actually market and to innovate? I want to touch on that because if we look at what has happened over our tenure of life, Lester Cox and myself always have this running discussion with persons who seem to have a view as to why our economy is the way it is. But we basically share the same view is because of innovation, because we know what marketing is about, or at least we know what public relations is about, even if we don't know about the other 6 or 7 points of marketing. But when we look at innovation under the Simonet, the Pinland, and the first term of Ingram, there was still a lot of innovation happening during that period of time, but our view is that after that, innovation seemed to have stopped. So tell us, what was the importance of innovation in building businesses and building economies and wealth?
One of the most important aspects of innovation, what underpins innovation is education. And so if you want to become an innovative society, you got to somehow throw away the model of education that we have now, where it's just math, English, and arithmetic, and so on. But you got to bring in more money management, understanding cost, and understanding money, understanding technology, understanding coding languages. Because remember now, some 20 years ago now, we've seen the world evolve into a more technical base. We are now talking through an application over the internet. We have hundreds of people watching us through their other platforms. Now, somebody's making millions and millions of dollars with this platform. Why couldn't it have been a Bahamian? And so that is where the innovation comes from. But we needed to underpin bringing in coding into the school system so that the young people could have been on top of the learning curve when a pandemic hit, because they would have been able to develop these applications to be able to produce and sell to the government. But we don't have that. And so while we talk about innovation in society, it's not just about somebody starting a business. It's about how do we now educate the masses of people to understand how do we now embrace new challenges for the future. And so for me, though, I think the educational system has been failing for a long time. And that is really the epicenter of innovation, the educational system. And so if we are to get the best business minds, we need to have the best students. And we got to insist that we get the best out of our school systems. And so one of the things that we talk about innovation, some management theorists talked about what they call Six Sigma. Six Sigma methodology. And for those who may not know, Six Sigma is the bell curve, standard deviation, six standard deviations to the left or either right. In other words, it's a prediction of error. In other words, if you're manufacturing screws or nails, out of every 1 million screw, there's only one error or one defect. And so you have to turn that into, how do we now do that into the service-based economy? How do we now make sure that every child that we're producing in our school system, out of every 10,000, there's only one error, one defect. And so that's where innovation comes from. It's about how do we now integrate systems into our learning process, into the way we operate, the way we think. It takes leadership, though, in order for us to implement this innovation. One time I did a major study on a major Japanese company that was very, very successful. And at the end of the board year, the Japanese and their board conference, we did very well. We did the best we ever did before. And the question is, what do we do now? And the leader said, we have to innovate. We have to change. And so even though we are successful, we still have to change, because you never know what's ahead of the future. And so what we are essentially done is we are afraid to change in our culture. We are set in a pattern. Change is that one constant in life that will always guarantee success. And so the same way the Japanese in their methodology of management style, it's about changing. No matter, even if they are successful, they still change for the better. We got to do that as a society.
Right.
Yes, tourism has been quote unquote semi-successful. It doesn't mean that we need to change. We have to change. So when you look at our country in terms of innovation, one of the greatest innovators we could possibly do is what Peter Drucker said, is that we have to now differentiate. We can now take tourism and turn it into edutourism.
Right.
So now we have the fifth largest island in the Bahamas, called Andres, which is 9,000 people live there. I always have a dream of building the dorms of the University of the Bahamas on the beaches.
Right.
And you city around that, and you invite 100,000 people from around the world to come to learn in the Bahamas, where the dorms on the beach. I mean, you can't beat that. And so what you do now is you're still selling tourism, but you're selling education with tourism.
Right.
So you innovate. And so the Bahamas is a peaceful place. We have a lot of land that we could engage the United Nations and say, listen, we want to build the largest diplomatic training center in the world for all nations to train their diplomats or their young diplomats in the Bahamas. We put it in, okay? Tourism, but edutourism now.
Yeah. So you tapping into the people side of the 5 pillars that I have in my
And that's where innovation comes on the state level.
Right. Yeah.
The state needs to now consider, okay, we have to carve out our niche. And so the Bahamas can now, when the world looks at the Bahamas, they can look at the Bahamas as that's where the city of knowledge is. We go there for the city of knowledge. We go there for innovation. We go there. We invite Microsoft and Google and all you guys to come and to be major players, and then we will build an economy out of this world. And so
that takes a intentional mental shift in our psyche, because we still stuck, and that's the reason why I have the show here, is that we seem to still be stuck on doctors, lawyers, accountants, cream, and everybody else is the tea bag finish.
Well,
right? So
that's where leadership comes in. You see, you know, bear in mind though that we are 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of prime ministers, and all of them have been in that very same circle, doctors or lawyers.
Okay.
And remember now, people only see the world through the glass in which they've been trained. And you can blame them for that. However, when you have somebody from a different dispensation looking at it from a different prism, we're able to offer a different point of view.
Right.
The trouble is, the people can't see because all they were able to see is from the point of view of the doctor and the lawyer.
Right.
And nothing's wrong with the doctors and the lawyers. However, the world is much bigger than just doctors and lawyers. And this is where innovation comes in. You get people with business mindset who understand how do we now make all these different pieces of the puzzle come together, so that you know, this $10 billion economy that we have, we can now expand it into a $50 billion economy and a $100 billion economy over the next 50 years. And that's innovation. That's true now, taking the very same thing that we have, which is tourism, integrating education in that, and building the city of knowledge in the Bahamas, in Andres. And then around you will build an entire city. And then you engage people like the technology companies like Microsoft and Google and so on, to integrate into all of our schools in the Bahamas systems and technology, so that every Bahamian student will have the tools they need to be able to compete. Now, I always tell, you know, I've been a part of a lot of American schools, and what Microsoft has essentially done is allowed all of their platforms free of charge for any grade school or university student in America. And because I went to American schools, I was able to download all of their programs free to write games and write applications and software. So it's all free once you're an American student. If I say, if I was the leader, I would say, listen, I want that in every school in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I want that in the University of the Bahamas. I want to be able to integrate in technology into all of our systems so that our kids can be able to innovate. And so looking at now, one of the greatest innovations that is coming on stream now is digital payments. The digital economy, okay? You know, the global economy is at 14 trillion, something like that. You know, that's the e-commerce economy. You know, the question I keep asking my friends is that if we sit in 30 minutes away from the largest economy ever existed, I ask them, how much money did you make from the American economy last year? And most people say not a dollar. How do you be 30 minutes away from the largest economy and you have not made $1 from the American economy?
And if you touch into that digitally, it is not 30 minutes. It's seconds, nanoseconds away.
Precisely. Well, and by extension, the world is now nanoseconds away. But you're looking at the treasure trove. You're looking at a treasure trove just right across the way.
Right.
We can now integrate into the American economy and find a way how we can make money. I was telling people, when we always looked at Miami as someplace to shop.
Right.
Then when you look at Miami again, blink your eyes and you look, Miami is just one big warehouse shipping to the Caribbean and Central America. So why don't Bahamians now invest their money into building their own operations to ship back home from Miami to the Caribbean and the US and Latin America and Central America? We can do it. And that's innovation, you see? So it's just looking at the world through a different prism and taking advantage of opportunities. Instead of you now the spender, you are the seller. But it takes leadership, though. What it takes is it takes the leadership of the nation to say, listen, this is the position that we're going to take from the next 50 years. We are not going to be playing defense anymore. We're playing offense. Because remember, you can never score if you're playing defense. We got to put our people on the offense so that they can score. The central bank governor has been having an argument with Bahamians over the last couple of years, and he's saying that Bahamians don't save. Bahamians save. And I can understand his argument. The challenge is we don't have nothing
to save. Right.
And so when you look at all of the expenses that Bahamians have versus what they have coming in, there's nothing really to save. The trouble is now when you look at a country on a microscope, and then you have 90% of the country that is broke, only have like $300 in their account. It lends to say, let's ask ourselves the question: if we have 50 years as an independent nation, tourism was our number one main product.
Right.
Everybody still broke after 50 years. Has tourism worked?
Right. So, but if we look at that same question you asked in the Cassius, if to go back to the piece about innovation and in our tenure as, and I would say that why I said so well in Simonet and those, because if you look from the statistics that is posted in the World Bank and trading economics and stuff like that, from the 60s to say 2019. The first half, basically up to the end of Ingram's first term, Prime Minister Ingram's first term, that would have been Warren Simonet, Sir Lyndon's whole tenure, and then up to the end of the first term, 97, 98, thereabouts. The Bahamas GDP basically doubled almost every 6 years in alignment with some major innovative activity, whether it was national insurance, whether it's any of these other things in terms of the central bank being implemented, whether it was the civil service expansion, universal education, as you mentioned, majority rules, casinos, internal governments, all of those type of things that happen in our country. But we don't seem to have seen any of that happening post-98. And so hopefully going forward, we'll see plenty, and that's why we want to talk about these things. So when we look at that now, and what you were talking about now, that it seems to me that the leadership mindset to the people and the people who have the ultimate power, our national mindset needs to change. Our narrative needs to change to be able to focus on these things and implement these things in a big way. And so there's going to be some things that has to happen to cause these implementations to be.
Well,
what are your thoughts on that?
Let's break down what is GDP. Because a lot of people, they may hear the word GDP. GDP is what they call gross domestic product. And gross domestic product is measured by the goods and services that are produced in an economy. In other words, when you buy a house, when you buy a soda, when you buy a car, when you buy, go to the shop, whatever you buy, all that is calculated as the GDP. Our GDP is about $10 billion right now in the Bahamas. So all of the economic activity, banking, service, all that amounts to about $10 billion in the economy.
Right.
In order to stimulate GDP, you need to bring in more investments. You need to also create more entrepreneurs so that more economic activities, more money flowing in. We have policies in our country that regulates money. And I say this over and over. In other words, I have an account on Amazon. So my kids will go online and they'll spend. It's tied to my bank account in the Bahamas.
Right.
Then click pay, the money goes to Amazon bank account. That's fine. So now Amazon could say a part of the American GDP is that they made $500 from Cassius Stewart, blah, blah, blah. That's
Right.
according to the national GDP of the Bahamas. I sell books online on Amazon. When my money is ready, I cannot say to them, send my money to the Bahamas.
No.
It doesn't work because central
Right.
bank is blocking the flow of money coming in. And so if you also have investments or you have an investor, you have to get regulation, you got to get approval. And the government, I think, up to about $5 million allowed to bring into the country. So we have almost the police officers stopping the flow of money coming into this country. If you want the economy to be robust, money has to be fluid. The only way to get a
Right.
fire going is to keep gasoline thrown on it. If you stop gasoline, the fire will go down. And so the Bahamas has enough activity to make just about everybody in the country successful. The problem is we have so much regulation that we block access to wealth. Even e-commerce. You know, I've been arguing for ACH payments. ACH payment is automatic clearinghouse payment.
Right.
That's money is transferred from bank to banks. So
Right.
if I sell my products online and somebody in Russia said, I want to buy this product, here's my credit card. The money goes from Russia straight into Cassius bank account in the Bahamas.
Right.
That can't happen in the Bahamas.
No. No.
And so we have all these roadblocks to stop wealth. That is the reason why we are having such problems. 90% of all the bank account holders have less than $300 in it. That means
But sorry, just to stop you right there for a second before you go too fast. They won't be able to pay that to a Bahamian holder in the Bahamas. But a foreign person doing business in the Bahamas, as I understand it, there's nothing to stop them from getting their money.
because they have what they
Because
call
they're not going to go through the same system that we're going through to get their money.
they have what they call a U.S. bank account. Now the point I'm trying to make is that as we evolve as a society, the only way to make people successful is to allow for the free flow of currency.
Yeah,
If
but I raised that to say that they are growing in the Bahamas, but we're not growing because of the same thing that you're talking about.
we see it every day. We see
But
it
we could grow as fast as them.
as an
And
excellent.
when we look at the small islands, and I look at some charts on the World Bank, and they were saying that we were all tracking the same way, but then in the last 30 years or so, they just took off and we still tracked low. And
Yeah.
we had similar economies, so we should have been keeping pace in the same trend. But I'm saying that to say that it's these things that you're talking about here that really is hindering us from 10x in our economy up to the $100 billion, which some people seem to think it's out of reach. But I
And
don't
so-
think it's out of reach, you know.
No, I mean, and so now the central bank has been innovative in their new approach with the sand dollar, which is trying to
$10.
stabilize the economy, which is very, very good. I think it's wise for them to stay ahead of the curve as it relates to the digital economy, so that benefit. However, though, when you're moving, you got to bring your people with you. You got to be able to say, listen, you need more Bahamians to get into the digital transferring of money
Space, right.
so that they could benefit. You have Cash App out of the US, you get Zelle, all of these companies that are benefiting from the digital economy, making hundreds of billions of dollars. And so we
Right.
need now to make sure that Bahamians can access now. Now here's this. To get in that space, you got to go through so much red tape. By the time you get to the end of the day, you ain't got no more money. Because now if you got to get this license and this security exchange license and this license and that license. So, for me, what I've done is just incorporate all the business in the US and get it done over there because it only makes sense because we got so much red tape in the Bahamas that it stops people from developing. It stops people from growing. And one of the greatest hindrance to our success is us. We are our own hindrance to our success.
Yeah. So Paul Scavella, welcome Paul, is saying that is it a matter of control? Does leadership then really want the average Bahamian to grow with such regulations? That's a question.
It's a question that makes you say, I wonder if, But you almost want to feel like, okay, after you're 50 years as a nation, you see where we are as a nation. We all know that the Bahamas is a successful country, but look at it on a micro level, the Bahamians aren't successful. How do we change that? And so it almost want to seem as if they want to keep us in this box so that we cannot expand. And that is,
but I don't think they want to keep us in a box per se, right? I think it's like you mentioned earlier, it's their education, experience, and exposure that doesn't allow them to see beyond the box. Can I give you a prime an example, right? As the lead in digital infrastructures built in the Bahamas from a telecommunications point of view for almost 28 years, what we're doing with digital today, in most intents and purposes, most of it you could have done for almost 10 to 20 years before. Yep. But we haven't. And a prime one was the simple thing as everybody getting excited about Zoom and this platform and the rest being able to do these things. We could have done these just about 20 years ago, provided any applications was available to do it. And a simple thing as working remotely. We pushed for that to happen, but our mindset was that no, there's no way we can let people work remotely or away from the manager being able to see and touch them, kind of thing. And so COVID came right here and slapped us twice.
Yeah.
And the next, everybody's doing it, and some people don't even want to open their offices again. And so we can have a different issue with buildings that's sitting around decaying.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that to say is it's once we could get the movers and shakers mindset to change, then we'll be able to realize a lot of these things that we have on the table, right?
Part of the problem is we keep electing the same mindset over and over, and we're stuck in the same rut. And I'm just hoping that a new shoot bursts through so that we can begin to see a new light. I started to hit on. We talked about the digital economy, but I want to hit back on this agrarian economy too.
Right.
We've been complaining about, the migrants of Haitians coming into the Bahamas and the problems they bring and so on and so on. But we have never, I keep saying, we never could score when you're on defense. So Haiti has a lot of land. We got money, okay? They got labor. And so the three of them, land, labor, and capital, goes together. We go to Haiti and we say, listen, we want to buy 50 acres of land here, 50 acres of here. We grow on onions, we go on celery, we go on tomatoes, we go on stuff. And we use our capital with their labor to develop the agriculture. So you have Bahamians using the land in Haiti to build the agricultural sector for the Bahamas so that we can be self-sufficient. And so, because remember now, we have 0.8% arable land in the Bahamas. Our land is suited for agriculture per se. But you get Haiti right there. You get Dominican Republic, you get all these countries. We have the capital. And so we can now say, listen, let's go and buy land, even we get lease land as a country. The Bahamas owns this, and we are growing to feed our people in another man's land. Yes, that's innovation.
Yeah, very much so. And, on the touch on that before we go to the break is this. In BGC was there, and also Leon Williams was at the head. We pushed to do the domestic submarine cable throughout the Bahamas, which we got buy-in from the government and was able to do that. We also pushed for a spur into Cuba and a spur into Haiti. Well, the international stuff gotten away with the Cuban one happening in any timely manner. But the Haiti one eventually happened, but it never materialized to the full plan because the idea was that we were going to provide cellular services for Haiti in this partnership that you talk about here in a different light so that then we could get revenues back in order to pay for products and stuff that we're doing. So it would have been a partnership of sorts. And,
he told me about that step by step as they were negotiating that. And I was very sad that, our own politicians somehow hindered the maturity of that.
Fair of not to do treading on ground that they're not familiar with. That's
so every phone call made in Haiti, cellular phone calls in Haiti, the Bahamas government could be making money.
Exactly. So, Digicel came in and cleaned up. As a result, we wouldn't have had any deficit we know it today. Yeah.
I'm familiar with that. So those are, and those are, I guess, just some of the small examples of
Right.
why the $100 billion is never realized. Is because you have small-minded politicians who are sitting in parliament who can only see as far as their noses, and they are not opening up the avenues for Bahamians to flourish. When I look at young people, and I see young people committing crimes. I see someone who will take the extent to go sell drugs, to try to transport drugs, and I say to myself, this man, one, is taking a risk. This man, two, is innovative. This person is definitely an entrepreneur for the wrong channels. Because we don't show our young people a successful pathway, they will create their own path, and more than likely that path end up on the wrong end. As a government, though, you cannot make everybody successful. What you do, you open up the pathway so they can see the path of success. But listen, these are the possibilities and potentials that you can become, you can be. And we will make sure, provide avenues or give you all the support as a government to make sure you're successful. One of the things, though, I've learned in the Bahamas is that we do not like to see people succeed. We love to see people fail. We want you to be just as good as us. And if you are succeeding, you thief, you're a drug dealer, you do something wrong. The mentality of Bahamians got to change. It has to come from the leadership. We got to make sure that we create a policy of number one, where we want everyone to succeed. Now, not everybody will succeed, but you want to give everybody the same equal opportunity to succeed. And that's what leadership is all about.
Right. Well, we here at Something to Think About think that we're getting closer to that space where the narrative is changing, and you see things in Parliament today that's been done slightly different and the like, and so we think it's gonna just pick up, snowball into a massive change, particularly as the electorate becomes more and more under 40 mindset, right? The generations Y, Z and X's kind of thing, Y and Z's. So with that, we're going to take a little break here, and we'll be right back in a minute or two. So you've been watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knows, and we have the mighty Cassius Stewart on us, businessman extraordinaire, very creative fellow. And we'll be back to talk and dive deeper into the 5 pillars and what can happen to expand your mind so that you can see that beyond just the tourism, and by the way, tourism is only scratching the surface, what we do in tourism. So that's a pocket of revenue that we could get more out of that too. And so we're going to dive into it when we come back. Madam Producer?
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
Behind every scoop, lick, and savor is a smile and memory being made or reminisce. Whether you're at work, out with family on a Sunday, or have friends visiting, flavor will meet expectations in our 32-ounce container for only $10 if you're having a special event as well. Exotic flavors ranging from soursop to Guinness is definitely worthwhile.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. We're here this evening talking with Cassius Stewart about how we can use Sun Sea, digital and people to generate 62 new millionaires a year. Right? That's our vision, that's our view, that's what we think are reachable. And we can achieve this systematically through fundamental steps and discipline to do it. Change of attitude and we'll be good. Welcome back, Cassius.
Welcome. Thank you so much. I was thinking about that $62 million millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was allocated $62 million for consultancies this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we now divided them to 62 Bahamians, we can give each Bahamian $1 million. So we can make $62 million this year if we want.
Yeah, I don't like the word give though. I mean, they're providing a service, a quality service that we provide. Bahamians can provide quality services. Not everybody just overseas could provide services.
Precisely. And the challenge is that, like I said earlier before we went to the break, if we don't respect, we don't appreciate what we have. You know, we like Bahamians when they go on the international market and succeed, and the world gives us praise.
Right.
But when we hear amongst each other, we don't like each other, we don't appreciate each other. And you know, my pastor always used to say, you know, they can appreciate me when I go on. Pastor Mark Monroe, you know. And you know, he said to me one time, he said, Cassius, you know what? I had to go outside of the Bahamas to get accepted back in the Bahamas. He said, when the world accepted me, then my people accepted me. Other than that, you know, you're just a little black, little Bahamian boy, you can't do nothing. And so we see that amongst ourselves. Bahamians somehow, we have not matured enough to reach to the point where we could say, listen, I think Dale is qualified to provide this service and we can give him $5 million. The first thing they say is, all of that for him? Who do you think he is? We can make him a millionaire? No, sir. We ain't that. That's the mentality. And so I used to minister and I only making 70,000 and I can give him 5 million. And so that's when the other questions come in. Now, if I give you this, you gotta.
Slumps. Slow money. Yeah.
That is the failure of our people. I prefer giving it to somebody who I put in your pocket and you fly when I never see you again, and then I ain't getting to worry about it. But they don't know that Bahamians got children to feed, they got mortgages to pay, they want to live good too. We could make this country a very successful country just from government contracts.
Yeah, but I mean, so seeing that you started with the people part, I always think the people part is the most powerful of the 5 pillars, right? Or the biggest pillar that holds up more even when the other one's falling down. Because the Bahamians are so resilient and adaptable. You see it in almost every single avenue that we put our minds to, we excel, where we have 3 or 4 Rhodes Scholars that way down to the smallest man activity in the Bahamas 242 land. And so when we look at all of those things, you know, to me it's all about investing in the people.
Yes.
And upscaling them. And we had a Patrice Taylor on, who's an HR expert on the show, one of the first shows that we actually had. And the potential that we have is so great. I mean, so Lyndon had it's about Better in the Bahamas, which was originally programmed to bring in more tourists and to tell people to come this way. But he also wanted it and directed it to help uplift the people and their confidence and their mindset, so they could know that they are just as good as everybody else in the world. And so that mindset seems to have gone to the side somewhere.
One of the challenges we face as a nation is, when we talk about people, is the health of our people, the quality of health. And when you look at most Bahamians, you know, the Diabetic Association says we got 155,000 registered persons with diabetes. That's 40% of the nation.
Right.
Then when you look at the hypertension, which is the number 1 killer of Bahamians, heart disease, then you look at the amount of cancer that is ravaging our society. It is almost impossible to ask for productivity when the whole nation's sick.
Yeah.
And so, as an organization, if you're in a company and everybody, if you don't provide healthcare, you don't provide healthcare for your people, they can't produce.
Right.
The problem we're going to face in the next 10, 15 years is that you're going to have a lot of people dying or sick or can't produce. And so it will definitely affect the production, the productivity, and the GDP of the Bahamas.
Right.
So we now, as a nation, have to put a lot of effort into how do we now create a more healthier citizen. And that is a challenge.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And yes, there's going to be the attrition as you speak. And there's also the attrition because we are below the fertility rate for our culture to stay active and be ours. But I believe that all of that is part of a natural flow. And eventually that's going to cause a lot of the brain
It may
drain,
be
as people call
artificial.
it.
That may be artificial. It may be intentional. I mean, some people think that it's artificial. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no justification for a whole nation to be sick.
Right.
It
No,
may be intentional. It may be intentional on some.
Yeah, but in this little show we have in here today for less than an hour, we don't have time to dig into all of that.
Yeah.
But that is true that it could be and it may be. And if we go back in history and look at some of the history shows, we will see just reason why that might be very plausible that that is the case that
But
we have.
But the underpinning saying is we got to make our people healthier, and we got to now demand that
Body,
everything,
mind, and soul.
whether it's food based, we got to inspect that. We got to demand a higher quality of food for our people to consume.
Yeah, but we also know, so Lyndon went and became a busboy, and then now you have people like some of the other ones, the Stuart Bowes and the Sandy Sands and the rest of those that fields who went up to the top in the tourism industry. Maybe not the tippity top, but up there. And there should be more of them than just the handful that is there. I think there should be, we should have that, should have been 10x by now. There should have been at least 30 of the Sandy Sands and the Stuart Bowes and the rest up there at that level.
So Lyndon, because he was a part of the building of the new Bahamas, he had an opportunity to make a lot of successful Bahamians.
But this is my point on the matter, why I'm saying between his tenure and the 10 years now is that was an intentional action to build the Bahamas, whereas we don't seem to have that intentional action. With the intentional action, we can get this $100 billion easy. So we just need to change our mindset.
Yeah, and like I said, we have to be strategic in what we do as a nation. I think we are so blinded by party colors that we destroy each other. When my government in power, that I will fire all of your people. Your government in power, you fire all of my people. So not taking into consideration that your people got children in school, you got mortgages and so on. So we will
value.
All of us swear allegiance to the same country. We all pledge our allegiance to the flag. We all one, but we are divided as a nation. Either you're red or you're blue. And if you're blue, when the red in power, you starve, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That is one of the greatest dangers to our society right now.
Yeah, but we have to value the mindset of the creatives outside of the traditional streams. Because, a fellow like you who was a creative in the business arena, ideas don't stop. I did engineering and telecoms. Ideas didn't stop. I benefited for many years. I'm blessed. I've had the opportunity to sit at the helm of leading telecommunications in all intents and purposes from a technology's point of view for almost 30 years and so forth. But the question then comes about how do we now superimpose that across the spectrum of our people so that the guys who's in the shack, who's creating stuff, could now find ways to monetize those skills that they have, like Shawnee and the rest of us are doing in sports, and Buddy and what. That same, they don't have any more greater skills and talents in the other skill for what the other guys have in the other fields. It's the same thing. It's just that they don't have access as the Shawnees and those had access to.
We just have to, like I said, as a government, though, I speak, from a government perspective, we have to provide the avenues for people to be able to nurture their talents and their abilities. And somehow we have created atmosphere where it's so cloudy and dismal that people don't want to expand. They don't want to become great. They don't want to because, oh, it ain't gonna never happen. Oh,
Right.
that's,
Yeah, the
yeah,
doubt. Yeah.
and so that is a failure. For every one person we take off the poverty line, that's one person social services ain't got to find money for. For every
Right.
one young man that we could prevent from going to jail, that's one social problem that we would eradicate. And
That's
what you do
$40,000
is
being I pay each year. But anyway, for one
we got to
person.
find avenues to build people up. We
Right.
don't build our people up,
Yeah.
and it goes to show that the next generation is repeating the process because the minute you see a fight broke out among school kids, the first thing they do is all record it and they gerry the fight on. Nobody trying to stop the fight. And so, in other words, I want y'all to destroy each other, and I will watch y'all do it. That's the message.
But their currency is likability, right? And so forth. And so they will transition that likability and that energy and excitement into fines when they need to pay for things themselves. Then they'll translate it in that. And I'm not, that's why I'm saying I see that generation is going to be very successful compared to my generation, which was promised and we're still waiting for the promise to be allowed. They ain't gonna wait for nobody to allow nothing to happen. They just gonna do. Yeah.
The generation that we now, the younger generation now, has some great advantages. They have access to information. One time ago, for us to get information, we had to go to a library. Now they could just click their phone.
Fine.
However, the prophet, I don't know if I call him a prophet, but Bob Marley said, they're bullied, they're very full, but they're still hungry. In other words,
Right.
they have access to information, but they're still dumb.
Right.
And so it is strange though, but even though they have access to all of this, they are still not producing what they should produce. When you
Right.
look at other countries and how their young people have taken advantage of technology, we are not doing the very same thing. Our
Right.
technology is used to either show somebody up, destroy somebody, or post something negative about somebody.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what gets the public eye. But that's not happening across the board. But I understand you and I appreciate that. And that's touch on what Stuart has to say here, Dion. I'm assuming that's one. He says, how do we preserve industries for Bahamians like is done for lawyers? Branding don't seem to favor Bahamians in the hotel industry. Do you follow that?
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay,
can
all right.
I can get a sense of what he's trying to say because the industries are preserved for you can't have people just walk in and say they want to become a lawyer in the Bahamas. Foreign lawyers can't just practice in the Bahamas, and so on because it's protected. That's also good for doctors as well too. Without
Right.
you need special permission. I think when you're dealing with the construction industry, I'm not sure how wide open it is, but you have foreigners coming in taking advantage of the construction industry versus Bahamian contractors. And so, we have to at some point provide protection for other industries that we can protect one. You can't protect one without protecting the other.
Right.
So I could almost understand what the writer is saying because, there are other industries that needs protection because you got these guys who fly in from all over the world, these foreign contractors, and build hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracted while Bahamians getting the low end of the stick. And so we could do the same. We could do the same for the Bahamian hotel industry. We could do it for the construction industry and so on. We just have to provide leadership in that area.
So let's look at something like under the sun, right? I categorize under the sun pillar would be stuff like the renewables energies and things that are renewable and the alternate energies, how light industries we don't embrace to capitalize using the sun. These are things that we don't have to pay for. It's going to continue happen. It's not going to run out, but we're not capitalizing on it. I'm thinking that there is a wealth of business opportunities and fortune to be made under that pillar.
Dale, you got to understand how the world works. And here's how the world works. There are some people who are making money off of fossil fuel. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars off of fossil fuel. You think it's in their best interest for you to now bring electric cars in? you think it's in their best interest for you to bring solar? Because now when you ain't paying that BEC bill, they ain't making money.
Right.
And so
No,
they
I appreciate that.
will do whatever they can to lobby to make sure that these things don't come to pass. And so now, if we have more, let's just say now we have more electric vehicles on the street. And so we say, okay, we want to have 20,000 electric vehicles by 2022. What that does to the gas stations, the people who own the gas station, the fuel
Yeah,
companies.
but if their trucks don't work, and your electric vehicles work, their trucks can't get, so they're not gonna be able to sell. So your electric vehicles delivering.
And so their goal is to lobby to make sure that, this shift in technology or this sun technology don't come to pass. We could have done this a long time ago.
Yeah.
And everything in the Bahamas could have been solar. But it doesn't serve the interests of the people who are making the money. You remember now, BEC had a law one time ago that said you cannot have your house 100% solar. You need to give 20-something percent to BEC. In other words, someone was saying, I ain't letting you free power. I need some money myself. So if the government saying that, that's what the private companies are saying. And that is the reason why
everything happens through protest, right? I mean, in some way or form, because politicians votes is politicians' currency. And so once
vote is their currency, but also now the biggest part, while you think the voter is more powerful, that is not true. It's the lobbyists. It's the people who are paying for them.
Because the people not lobbying. If the people lobby, they will be the most powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the people who are riding where we go on the street, and they love the little say. And the lobbyists come and put them $30,000 in the hand of the politician. He'll write that to fix whatever they need to fix right away. And so that is an integral part of this thing called democracy, though. I mean, you have US, you have it in the Bahamas. It is the money behind the politicians. They're the ones who call the shots. They're the ones who say, I need this, no tax on this, I need this done, I need this that. While you beating up your gum thinking you're making the say, you're really making no say. The money, it's people who got the money that makes the rules. The politicians sit there and they are puppets to the money makers. And that's why
I mean, that's generally the case, but there's ways to circumvent a lot of that too, right? Just look at some of the major unions, the BCPOU and the rest of those, that people were very successful in the early days. So Paul Scabella is also saying we need to encourage them to innovate as well. Yes. And so if we look at the SAN now, SAN, I would say, to deal with land, you talked about agriculture and the rest, and crown land is needed for that in the most part, because I'm thinking that's what crown land for, more like light industries, land use of housing and investment, because we're not using our land well. We're eating it up. We have schools that are 1 story and 50,000 feet wide. That can be good. Natural resources, the aragonite and the rest, growing weed and things that actually can grow in the Bahamas under this 1 little 8% that you talk about.
Yeah.
We need to find things that work well. Medicines. I think we saw somebody on the radio, on the TV the other day, being highlighted for his innovations. There's so many things, Kapari, from way back when we were doing, that we could be benefiting from on this, not just looking. Point is, we gotta not look to the traditional way of things and look for things beyond that.
Yes. I mean, when it comes to agriculture, where there's canning and packaging, you're understanding how, whether we're growing tomatoes and lettuce or celeries or whatever, making sure we have the right canning houses, whether the government needs to come in to provide the initial capital, create a cooperative, and then let the farmers then buy the government out for canning, whoever's growing onions and tomatoes. Whether it's fishing, there are a lot of fishermen in Moores Island who perhaps don't have no freezers. They will say, okay, we'll put up the $100,000 to buy your freezer. All your fishermen could buy into the cooperative. You pay the government over time, and then you'll now own it. And so a lot of these industries just need assistance. They need boosts, but they also need that managerial assistance too. A lot of fishermen, they could fish, but they can't manage. And so you need to be able to provide that expertise across the board to help them. And so, I strongly believe, though, that we could produce so much from the agricultural industry that we have access to export. And become critical now, because not only the Bahamas is looking for is having trouble. A friend of mine just came from a conference in Colombia. What the Colombian government has decided to do is gather all of the Caribbean leaders to get together to see if they could buy products from Colombia. And I let me get you all together. I got this, I got that, and you all could buy from me because I know the world now a shortage of the
Shortage, right.
So, but we have to always be a step of the curve. We know that, all of our goods coming in from America. Let's begin to grow our crop. Even if we could segment the islands to grow, this part will grow tomatoes, that grow onions, just grow celery. And then also vertical farming, because we have such bad land on some of these islands, we could do vertical farming, hydroponics. And so, but the yield on these things are so great that we could grow for export as well too. Once we meet the quota now. But one thing you don't one thing you realize when you go to Eleuthera and islands like with heavy tourism, particularly Harbour Island, the local farmers and fishermen is having hell to meet the demand from the tourists for fish and crops. And so where do they get the supplement from? It's that we got to be able to look at these areas and figure out, okay, now farmers, this is what we need. We need you to grow X amount to be able to supply Valentine's down in Harbour Island, to supply all of the new resorts that are popping up all over Eleuthera. And so you got such heavy demand down there that we got to be able to feed them. But we got to be strategic. It can't.
I was just gonna say that.
2 fish today. I ain't fishing tomorrow. I ain't gonna fish tomorrow. I already make my $100. I can rest.
Or everybody doing the same type of fishing in every space, trying to duplicate. Nobody doing the other areas, which could be a filler and stuff like that. And even the stuff that you just mentioned about people saying, well, okay, they don't have the management capacity. They might have the technical skill and innovation and creativity to do something. But then you have consultancies like myself who would have been in leadership for 30 years or so. And there's a wealth of people like us who are, and there's the people who are 60 and above who have skills who could also come in and help in management with some of these small entities, because the small businesses are not going to go able to hire the big accounting firms and the rest of those who provide management services per se. Their fees is going to be out the window. But it's better to have something in between than that.
And this is where the consultant fees comes in right now. That listen,
it's 62 billion.
Let's
call it billion. It should be billion.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to make sure you get this $100 million right now.
Yeah.
But you see, it's about making sure that we could provide the level of management services to industries that are fledgling.
Right.
When you go into Moores Island, you see all these fishermen. They're catching all these fish. They have to waste a lot of fish because they don't have the packing houses and the freezers and so on.
Right.
Say to you go down there, you help them over the management. Let's know exactly what they need, what type of capacity they need to be able to freeze, store, count lobsters and so on. Packing, create the linkages between them and Red Lobster and all of the fishing houses in the U.S. for export. And so they may not have that capacity, but they can fish.
Right. Yes, so that's the point.
That way, you help build this new economy, this new movement in the fishing industry. Every island has a unique twist. When you go to Exuma, a lot of the fishermen, they don't fish much in Exuma because the fishermen turn their boat into tourist pleasure craft, because there are a lot of tourists want to see the keys. So there ain't much fishermen there. So now we need to plan fishermen in Exuma, because of course you still have Sandals, you get Grand Isles, you get all these February Point, all these major facilities on the island that need to eat. And so instead of bringing in food from New Providence, we make sure that the fishermen on the island of Exuma could be able to provide food, whether it's the vegetables and or livestock and all. And so I'm not seeing a livestock farm in Exuma, but we need to put a livestock farm there. We need to grow our sheep and pigs and our cows for steaks on the island of Exuma, because we have the demand already.
Right.
So I went to the fish fry and couldn't find fish in Exuma.
What?
I buy chicken. I said, what's the point of the fish fry if I cannot buy fish? In other
Yeah,
words,
yeah.
brother, we too busy taking tourists to see the keys. We ain't got time to fish.
Yeah. I
So
can imagine that.
every problem presents another opportunity.
Very
You
much
see, and
so.
there's an
Yeah.
opportunity now for fishermen to use that to now develop the fishing industry in Exuma to be able to supplement what is needed down there for food.
Yes. Yeah. So Stuart is saying here again, they say we must think global and it must begin with adolescents. And we need to scrap our education system and create a system, something on my screen, system that includes something's blocking the screen.
Industry.
In our industries. Yeah. Cool.
The thing about our educational system, around the world now, a lot of people are shifting towards home-based educational system with more strategic educational system. In other words, we don't teach our children about money, e-commerce. We don't teach our children about the global market. We don't teach our children in grade school about money management. And so we expect them to be, you're going up to college and you got to be disciplined. You got to know how to spend money. But we never taught them how to do that. We figure it comes by osmosis. From grade school, from grade 8 or grade 7, we need to implement money management courses to teach our kids about managing money, budgeting, understanding costs. And had our leaders had that same course in grade 7, grade 8, they wouldn't be spending the amount of money they spend. This administration is talking about they want to raise taxes. I said, buddy, the problem is not the taxes. The problem is you're spending too much taxes you already have. And so
that's part of it, and the other part of it is that the historically up to this administration hasn't been innovating, so there's no new revenue streams coming in.
Precisely.
Because if we have increased the revenue streams, we don't need to increase the taxes because they'll collect more.
Precisely.
So they'll be able to charge more, at least.
So the challenge is right now we're bringing in about $2.2 billion in taxes, which include VAT, but we spend almost $3 billion. So we have a fiscal deficit of about $700 to $800 million, almost $1 billion in a fiscal deficit. So in other words, what this administration is doing, and the young people may be able to relate to this. It's like going into the club with $100 for you ordering 2 bottles of Hennessy. There's no way you could afford that.
Right.
You can afford what you want. So this government is saying they want this, they want that. It amounts to about $3 billion, but we only got $2 billion. So now you got to find another $1 billion just to borrow to pay for what you want. That includes your big cabinet. That includes all the people you're appointing, all these extra consultants you're hiring, all this money wasting. Somebody got to pay for it.
Right, and it's based on some of the conversations you have on the side is that there is a structured plan, a strategic plan to do it. The challenge I have with it is that not enough of the plan is being communicated to the people so that they will buy in and understand the roadmap and then be able to, instead of shopping certain other places, they will shop in the areas which will then feed the plan beyond the tribalism that you talked about earlier, right? Let's assume the tribalism didn't exist. You still have to feed somebody to spend their money where you want them to spend the money versus. Well, and you got to do that through marketing.
One of the dangers in business is that if you got to borrow money to pay salaries, then it's time for you to shut up business.
Shut up, yeah.
Right? You borrow money to make return on your investments. And so what we are borrowing money, and that money is now being dropped into a black hole. In other words, now the $700 million we got to borrow now is not for any new industry.
Yeah, but Cassius, you could shut down a business and start over another business. You can't shut down a government and start another government. So they have to seriously sit down and do a transition and be like the Chinese and have discipline to stick to it.
It's
But
money.
you're not going to stick to it with 5 in and 5 out.
It's the money.
Happen.
We need to learn money management, and our leaders don't understand money management. One of the theories they have in government is, "Oh, don't worry, we can just spend." Government's supposed to have a deficit.
Their money.
That's not true because when you look at Sri Lanka, that just the whole the economy collapsed because they can't pay their debts.
Right.
We are now hovering about what debt service ratio of about almost 101%. Our national debt is what 11 billion right now. And so when you look at also the cost of which we are now borrowing is higher, it's put on us buying. So the cost of our money is higher. And so which going to cause problems for us now, because how do we now service those debts?
That's why they're troubling so much.
We spend 500
they're marketing
payments, 500 million on interest payments. And so these payments, that's what we're servicing, but we ain't touching our debt, the principal. And so at some point though, you keep piling up straw on the camel back, and there will be one straw that break the camel back.
No, I agree, Cassius, but I'm saying that's the same, the Drucker School of Management, the Guru Drucker, saying marketing and innovation. Well, we have done marketing well to campaign to win elections, at least the PR portion of it. And we are marketing now with a lot of the travel, whereas during the last 4 and 5 years, we might not have done as much marketing as we should have been doing to keep up in a service-based economy, right? Now, I'm not saying that what is happening now is the right level. I don't know, because we haven't seen any of the results come back yet from it to say whether we're getting the returns on the money now compared to what we're spending. But I'm saying from a principal point of view, you have to market. When Leon Williams was CEO of BTC, there was one government who beat him half to death every day because his picture was always in the paper and the rest. But the company grew to a $360 million company doing his watch because of his marketing, right? BTC has always innovated from time to, well, let me not say always, because it stopped with the privatization, right? Around that period of time, leading up to it, the process of privatization, which started in the late 90s, right? The innovation slowed down as to what capital development and everything slowed down big time for the private people to come in. So what I'm saying is those two things that Drucker is saying, innovating and market, you have to do. So this government is doing one of them or attempting to do one of them. And my thing is that you can't leave out innovation portion in the process, and you have to put these things on the table and let the young people who are the creative minds in our country, put them in a think tank, give them $10,000 or whatever it is, and tell them, come up with a national plan or whatever and develop this thing properly.
Our leaders don't think if they can give you $10,000, they figure they gotta own you for the rest of their life. They're like a Bahamian club. Bahamian man in the club, if the Bahamian man buy a girl a drink, you think you got to stick with her for the rest of the life, the rest of the night, and she owe him,
Yeah, well, you can say that way around too, but anyway,
They give you a contract, they own you, and you got to support them, and you got to do whatever they say. You can't go your way. I own you now. That is the wrong mentality to have. And so
that ain't a stick. I know that. That can't.
And so, but like I said, we have all of the elements. In the manufacturing process is what they call input, throughput, and output.
Right.
The input is the raw material that goes into the factory and the machinery, and the throughput. If the output has some kind of deficiency, then we have to check the throughput. This throughput system, the government, we got to make sure that when we're producing, whether it's industries or people or citizens, that we are producing the best. The question is, we got to demand the best. In leadership, you all know. And Drucker also talks about it. In leadership, you got to demand the best. You got to expect the best. You got to set expectations and set realistic goals that people can reach. And for me, I believe that if you give the Bahamian people a mandate of excellence, and for me, I want to talk about a policy of number one. We can be number one in agriculture in the region. We can be number one in aviation. We can be number one in technology.
In marine.
Number one in education. We got to begin to set the standard and then fight for it. And so we may not achieve it in the first year, the second year, the third year, but if we see incremental growth, then we know we're headed in the right direction.
Right.
And we got to begin to now demand that our people be excellent in all they do. And that is
when we say demand, Cassius, are we talking about just the people who don't have a good grasp on this? Are we talking about the entities like the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce or
I'm talking
other
about,
operations who know the intricacies of a specific thing,
I'm talking about
saying this has to be higher.
no, I'm talking about across the board.
Yeah.
Leader of the nation has to instill throughout all the veins and arteries and capillaries of the society that Bahamians, we are going to be the best. We are striving to be number one in education. So
Right.
that means parents, teachers, students, civil society, everybody got to be on board to make sure that our educational system is overhauled. If
Right.
you have to bring in the private sector to help invest because we can't afford this and that, we got to do that. We got to bring in all of Bahama and Atlantis, them who are getting billions and millions of dollars. So we want you to partner to overhaul our educational
Exactly.
system.
Right.
We got to say to all of these investors from Albany and them who come here and make millions and millions of dollars, listen,
Yep.
this is our goal as a society. We want you to partner with us. We want to
Right.
make our educational system number one in technology. And here's the
Right.
here's the blueprint. This is the cost. I need y'all to make it happen.
Right.
That's what I would do.
Awesome.
I sit them and tell them, I need y'all to make this happen.
Yep, that sounds good to me. And especially with the amount of money that I hear some people get on the radio and talk about what we are deferring, I call it, in taxes that we could be collecting if we had more of a universal tax system.
You know,
equity in the system.
We have a system that we pander so much to foreign investors as if we don't have a symbiotic relationship. You understand? You know, we think that we only need them and they don't need us.
Yeah.
You know, we give Bahama $4 million
But
a year.
that's the old school mentality that I'm saying the young mentality don't have that attitude.
We have a symbiotic relationship. If you die, I die. If I die, you die. So it's in your best interest to make sure that all of us live. It's that same scenario with the dog and the heartworm. That sometimes if you kill the heartworm, you kill the dog at the same time.
Right.
You have to make sure allow them to live together so that both can survive. But relationship, a company like Bahama, companies like Atlantis, Albany, and all these big conglomerates, they need the Bahamas to survive.
Yeah.
And in your best interest to make sure that all of the organs of our society functions. In order for you to get good employees, you need a good educational system, right? So we invest in our educational system. Let's make our educational system the best so that when we produce grade 12 students and you hiring people, you know you're hiring the best.
Right. Yes. Yes. We put that forward before too. Yep.
Our mentality in the society is that, oh, well, we need them. They need us just as bad as we need them.
Yep. Yep. But I mean,
this is not a one-way street. This is a two-way street. And so all of the organs in a society, we all enjoy the bounty of the Bahamas. My business, your business. And so for you to say you don't want to pay tax, it means that you don't enjoy the bounty. If your company is benefiting from the Bahamas, that means you enjoy operating within the system. So paying tax is supposed to be a part of helping more people enjoy the bounty. That goes for the foreigners as well too. When they come here, they enjoy the bounty of the Bahamas. And so that means making sure that we can build the agriculture sector, the healthcare system. I mean, just look at the healthcare system in Exuma. When you walk inside the lab,
clinic.
You get Granals, you get Sandals, you get Valentino, you get all these other Peace and Plenty, all these nice something going on, making all this money. So I would partner with them and say, listen, we need to make sure that the healthcare system in Exuma works because when your guests get sick, they need somewhere to go.
Yeah, but under the people part, I had local government, but I mean, it seemed like people shying away completely because if that was in place, then the locals would be able to deal with these things and not everything come back into bottleneck and the Nassau and then take forever to happen.
But you see, it comes from, they're not going to listen to local government because they don't take local government seriously. The government don't take local government seriously and local government don't take themselves seriously. So that's just where it is.
Yeah.
We need the leadership of the country to set a strategic goal for the nation. And you have to go with a goal. You have to go after making sure that island by island, you look at exactly where they are, who is on that island. You know, they said Exuma, Ilucha got like 16 million billionaires on it, right? We don't know where they are, where they live at, but plenty of them there. So it's in their best interest to make sure that the clinic or the hospital be built in Ilutra. The hospital was supposed to be built now 10,000 years ago. So when the man,
They say 2% of the world's billionaires live in Albany. So, I mean, we shouldn't be wanting for nothing, if
what
you
I'm
ask
saying
me.
is
Yeah.
that these people will get sick.
I agree. I'm supporting what you're saying. Yeah.
So it's in their best interest to make sure that Princess Margaret Hospital is functioning optimally.
Yeah.
It's in their best interest to make sure, it's in the best interest of Sandals and the rest of them to make sure that the clinic on the island of Exuma functions optimally. It's in the best interest of all them billionaires in Ilucho to make sure that our clinic is built, if they got to build it themselves. Because
Yeah.
if you get sick, you need someone to go. I mean, most of y'all can hop on your plane and fly away, but there may be a time that you need service right away that you can't fly.
Yep. That has
But
happened.
it's engagement,
Yeah.
though, it's a partnership. You have to partner with people and let them see where you're going. Part of the problem is a lot of them don't trust being part of the experience. They figure politicians, they figure they give you money, you can keep that money for you.
Well, they could do public partnerships and do it in public-private partnerships and do it in a different way.
Yes.
So go right here saying that maybe we can identify a small group of like-minded persons to get the first 62 prospective millionaires to build innovative and new thinking. Yes, awesome. So that is great, and we can do it. So Cassius,
Yes, sir.
I had a professor who always said to us about taking action, and he said that there's this old man who's sitting on the porch every day, and his dog sits beside him moaning over and over and over and over again. And his grandson comes up almost every day and asks him, why doesn't Spot or whatever the dog was named move? Right? First he asked him why he's moaning. And he said, because he's laying on a nail. And he lays in the same spot every day. So he asked him, why doesn't he move? He said, because the pain to move is more greater than the pain to stay still. And so we have to get to the point where we can cause, if the pain isn't going to be different, the pain for us to take action to be less than pain of us not taking action in the society and so forth. So with the 2 minutes or so we have left of your overtime that you were so graceful to give us, what would you like to say to the general public out there, other than what you've already said, that to cap this all off?
I will end by saying, as a people, we got to demand excellence. We got to want more. We got to want better. And for me, I preach a policy of number one, and everything across the board. I believe that the Bahamas can be the best country in the world. I believe that. Now, I just want my people to believe that. Deficiencies in education, but we can overcome those deficiencies and be number one in 5 years. Health, we have deficiencies in healthcare. Across the board, we have deficiencies. But with the right management and leadership, we could become the number one premier healthcare system in the Caribbean region. We can do that. 0.8% arable land, small country when it comes to agriculture, but we can produce the best cows, the best sheep, some of the best citrus, some of the best produce right in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Number one in it. We have to believe that we can be the best. That's the only way we will be the best. And like you say, the pain to move is probably too great for some people. That's why they stay there and die. We got to break ranks with the pain that is killing us. And that's the political system that is strangling us. We got to break ranks. And move forward in a new direction. That's the only way.
That's awesome. Well, we thank you kindly for all these words of nuggets and vision and stretching our minds to see things differently. So, and that's what we're all about here on Something to Think About with Dale Happy Notes. We want people to just stretch their minds and know that there's different ways of doing things than what we see in the narrative every day. And they, particularly the young creatives, to stretch your mind, use the idea and your creativity. We saw about a week or so ago, Bernice Popel, the young Popel in her early 20s, doing COVID, shut down, didn't have a job anymore, and so she went with a Grammy, and they started making ice cream. Now they have flavor. What's flavor? I forget what. Taste the flavor. That's right. My brain shutting down on me. Yes. And so that's Bahamian home grade ice cream. So now we saw it in the commercial. So
Very-
there's many things that we could be creative for and build this $100 billion economy. It looks like a big number. Yeah, it's 10x, but we've 10x multiple times in the first 40 years of or 30 years of the period that we have been in internal rule. And we could do it again. We just have to make up the mind. As Pinland said, it's better in the Bahamas. We are just as good as anybody else. And we've proven in a global stage that we can be better than a lot.
Absolutely.
So thank you kindly. We love to have you here again at some point in time where we touch down on some other things. And you're always a very engaging conversationist on these matters.
You're
welcome. You do likewise.
Thank you.
Everybody on Facebook, social media, YouTube, the like out there. Thank you again. Be safe. Enjoy. Watch some more videos. Madam Producer.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242